it's Mary. I hope that you are doing well. Thank you so much for joining me here today. So we're going to look at techniques for making textiles today. And there are a lot of techniques that you can use. There is weaving, knitting, and macrame, to name a few. Today's technique is macrame. So in macrame, you create by tying knots. And we are going to keep it simple. We're basically going to use one knot for making it, one knot to start off. And my project today is going to be a bracelet. Now you can use macrame for making lots of different kinds of projects. The ideas are endless once you have the technique down. You can make plant hangers, you can make wall hangings, you can make jewelry, you can make a shopping bag. So I will show you the materials that we'll use. And we're going to start off with a twine or a cord. I just got basic utility cord, and you can purchase more specialized cords made of better materials, but I think when you first start off, the least expensive cord you can get is probably best, and then as you improve with the technique, you can get more specialized cords, and depending on the project, you might want cords that have different thicknesses or weight-bearing abilities. The nice thing about this utility cord, I just got it at my local grocery store. It's also got a cutting device in it, so you can just use it, cut off the length you need, and you're ready to go. So when I made a bracelet the other day, I used about a 48-inch piece for a 12-inch choker. And I'm not always the best at estimating how much I'm going to use. I think I've got about 3 feet here. I'm doing a 7-inch bracelet. Other materials you are going to want is tape. You can use beads, you don't have to. I kind of like to use beads as the finishing element on my bracelet, and also it doubles as something to use to fasten it. I've got a ruler. You don't necessarily need a ruler. I find it helpful to know when I'm getting to the end of the project. A pair of scissors, of course the twine or cord, and a pencil. So to start this technique, you take the pencil and you fold your twine or cord in half. You fold it over and you pull your cord through. It's called either a lark's head knot or a lark knot, and that is the way you basically fasten your cord onto whatever you're using to build your knots on. So once I lay my project down, I like to tape it there to keep it stable. And you're going to want to make sure that your tape is long enough to do that. And you're going to find that as you're doing your project and adding knots, you will probably need to readjust your tape. Another thing I like to do is just separate these strands. So you have your left strand and your right strand, and you want to make sure you don't have them overlapping. So you have your left strand and your right strand and your 2 middle strands. I tape the 2 middle strands down because basically we're just going to go under those and over those repeatedly. So we don't really need to be able to manipulate them too much. And I'm going to do this from this side, and hopefully you can see what I'm doing well. So you're going to start with your left strand. You're going to lift those 2 middle strands, and you're going to take your left strand under that and over your right strand. You're then going to take your right strand, pick it up, lay it into this big open circle that you have from your left strand, and pull it tight. So you can, so then you're going to take the right strand and do basically the same thing. It goes under the two middle, over that left strand. The left strand gets pulled through the center of all that and tighten. And you just keep going. Now I am working upside down here so that you can see better. You do have some creative freedom here, because you can decide if you want to make these knots tight, like I have them there, or if you don't want them that tight, it can also look pretty nice if you do a more open knot, and then you can see the threads in there. So for this project today, I'm just going to do a tighter knot, and this is the square knot that we are creating. If instead of alternating sides and starting with the left strand and then the right strand, if you just started with the left strand and kept using the left strand over and over and over again, you would add a twist to your bracelet or whatever your item is that you're making. So instead of being this flat row of knots, it would be a row of knots that twists. And when I talked about that just now, I said if you did that repeatedly with the left strand, it's the same thing if you do it repeatedly with the right strand. So you just end up with a row of knots that twists in the opposite direction that it would if you started with the left strand. So I'm making about a 7-inch bracelet, and you can tell that we've got about 1.5 inches there. So I'm not going to make you watch me do all 7 inches. I will say that I am probably going to add a bead to my bracelet at some point. So I'm just going to quick show you how you would do that. And my ends there are uneven, so I'm just going to cut them more even. And depending upon the kind of bead you have, you want to make sure the bead you're using that they have a hole that's big enough to fit your strings. I also, just to keep it from fraying or doing weird things, I tend to just tape those end pieces and feed those into there. Let me cut that end into an easier way. So I just feed it into there. And sometimes you have to force it through, or you can twist it to get it to go through. So I'm going to add a little more tape to that. So I have a longer piece that's easier to manipulate, and try that again. And I'm just going to twist it to get it to go through. So what I ended up doing was adding a smaller piece of tape on the end of that, just putting that in there, unbending a paper clip, and just helping feed it through. So, to add the bead, I've strung it on the middle 2 strands, and now I'm just going to continue my knot making around that bead. So that's going to secure it. And I can keep going and making my knots. So when you are done, you can just slide that pencil right out, and it opens up into a couple of bigger strands, and you're just going to tie a knot to secure those. So just a regular knot. Just like that, and if you want to be extra sure, you can double knot it. You don't have to. So as I was working, I kept measuring the bracelet around my wrist, and it is a good length. So what I'm going to do now is take another bead, very similar to the one I had on there, push that through. Now I can take that off the end, and if you want, you can continue your knot tying on this side and just make the same kind of knot to secure it, or you can just take it and do like I'm doing. Gather all those strings together. Make sure they all pull through. And pull it down so it's tight. So now this is where I want to test to make sure that that bracelet is going to be secure with that bead as my anchor. And I think that we've chosen a pretty good sized bead. I think that's going to hold right on there. I do have this longer strand hanging down. Right now you can decide if you want your strand hanging down, or you can just trim wherever you think it's best to trim. And there is my bracelet. So try out some macrame. You can start off with a smaller project like I did, and then as you get better at it and get used to the technique, then you can plan a more intricate and detailed project. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we will see you again next time.